I'm calling to order the regular meeting for the Caroline County Planning Commission for March 26, 2026. Will we please come to order? I would like to invite everyone to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation given by Mr. J.D. Young. To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic of the nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Father God, we come to you this afternoon. Thank you for being many blessed. Thank you for the opportunity that you put before. As we come before this season, we also have to bring our like mind and watch together so that we can be benefited and best. With that being said, Father, we just want to thank you one last time. Say amen. Amen. All right, so tonight I'm going to introduce Mr. Lee Tingler from the Madison District, all the way to my far right, Mr. J.D. Run. Oh my God, my tongue tied tonight. J.D. Young from Reedy Church District, Mr. Steve Rollins from Mattaponi. My name is Richard Williams, and I represent Western Caroline. And to my immediate left is Dr. Carol Horton of Port Royal. And with us for staff tonight, we have the county planner, Mr. Craig Pennington, and our zoning administrator, Mr. Brad Robinson. And I would thank you all for your attention. So tonight we have a couple of things on the agenda. We have to approve the minutes from the February 2026 meeting. Has everybody looked at the minutes, and does anybody notice any adjustments or corrections that need to be made?
On page 15, Mr. Pennington, in the statement that you made, there was in reference to, I think it was Rappahannock. It's about middle way of the page, at page 15, about the right of way, and it says something about with only the two buildings in the subdivision. So is that, did you mean to say subdivision, or did you not say? Because that's not a subdivision, or do we consider that a subdivision?
It is a subdivision.
Okay.
And so it was originally one parcel, and Union Bank Share split it into 9 parcels.
Okay.
And so that is correct.
Okay. All right. That's all I had a question on.
Anybody else?
And above that, I was asking questions. One of them sounds more like a statement, though. And it's supposed to be Dr. Horton asked, do the spaces have to be sheltered with shrubs? Not that big a deal, but it's just near the top of page. Yeah, it goes down with my series of questions.
Yeah. So the do should be in between said and the.
Correct.
Okay. Anybody else? I make a motion to approve the minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The motion carries. Minutes for the 26th of February 2026 meeting.
Could you motion again to approve the minutes as amended?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, I move to approve the minutes as amended with the do being added between said and the on page 15. I make a motion to approve said minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? All those in favor say aye.
You need a second. Do a second.
And we have a first and a second, and the motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Pennington. All right, so next in online, we have a text amendment petition for the thrift store. Articles 5, rural preservation. And Mr. Pennington. Oh, Mr. Robinson.
It's actually going to be me, yes. Yes. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. So I'll begin by stating that the zoning ordinance has a provision that if there is a use that's not specifically listed within a zoning district, then a property owner may petition the Board of Supervisors to add a requested use. And this provision is in Article 19 of the zoning ordinance. While we certainly try to work with the enumerated uses that are existing in the ordinance, sometimes we're just approached with projects and uses there's just not a use classification that request fits into. So we have two of these requests tonight that were recently received by the department. So the first request on the agenda is for a thrift store. Now, the petition has been submitted by the property owner's representative, Access Land Survey. The property owner desires to operate a thrift store and add the use to the RP zoning district. As the subject property is zoned RP, it's located along Route 1 in the Port Royal district. That property currently contains a vacant building that was once occupied by commercial use that existed before Caroline County adopted zoning. That particular parcel never became zoned business or commercial, so the commercial use continued to operate and then ceased and became non-conforming. And the property owner would like to utilize this building for a thrift store. Now, typically, if we were being approached by someone wanting to operate a thrift store and they were looking at property that was zone B1, or perhaps even PSC, that use would be just considered to be a retail store. That'd be classified as a retail store and would be allowed by right within the B1 zoning district. Retail stores are enumerated within the B1 district as a use by right. Let's see, retail stores and shops, however, as defined in Article 2, are not permitted within the RP district. And that's neither as a primary or principal use, nor are they permitted as a special exception use. So the purpose of the petition process, when the county is approached by someone that's requesting to add a use to the ordinance, just for clarity, this is not a public hearing tonight. This is just a procedure to gauge the county's interest in whether we would like to move forward with the requested text amendment. So the purpose of the process tonight is to gain a recommendation from the Planning Commission, and we in turn will take that information to the Board of Supervisors, who will ultimately decide whether to move forward with a text amendment for this request. Now, and then one thing I would just add is that per Article 19, we're not working under any specified time frame, so you're not obligated to make a decision tonight if you wanted to discuss this over the course of several meetings, or if you wanted to, go ahead and make a recommendation tonight, that is at your discretion. The property owner, of course, would like a decision sooner than later. So we would take this to the Board of Supervisors as soon as possible. Now, when you were looking in your packet, you should have seen in the petition a document that was prepared that discusses some use classifications like antique store, general store, and retail stores and shops. And then that petition contains some proposed regulations for the county to consider. They included a recommended definition for thrift store. They have proposed that the county enumerate a thrift store as a special exception use in the RP zoning district. And then they have proposed some draft development standards for the county to consider, and those development standards would be added to Article 15 of the zoning ordinance. And again, these are just proposed regulations. These can be changed and adjusted as we move forward and prepare a formal text amendment. And just so that I'm clear, If we take this recommendation to the board and decide, and the board consents to move forward with this, then we will have to come back to you with an actual text amendment and a public hearing. So tonight, and the language that you see in your packet is not the proposed language. This is what the petitioner has drafted as a recommendation or proposal. Staff will have to formalize the text amendment and bring that back to you in a public hearing at a future meeting. So just want to make it clear that you're not obligated to act on or adopt what's in front of you tonight. And just another thing to mention from the staff information in your packet. One thing, if you notice, when you were looking at definitions, we define retail stores and shops, and the definition in Article 2 lists some samples of what constitutes as a retail store and shop. For example, it talks about it being a building and the associated land area used primarily for sale of merchandise at retail for consumption by the immediate purchaser or for the rendering of personal services. And then it says, including but not limited to, so these are examples, barbershop, beauty parlor, drugstore, newsstand, food store. It lists a number. I won't read them all, but I wanted to point out that that definition lists antique and gift shops. And if you were to go to the RP zoning district and look under special exception uses, while retail stores and shops is not enumerated, antique shop is. So for whatever reason in our ordinance, at some point in time, the county felt it was appropriate, while it may not be appropriate to enumerate retail stores and shops throughout the RP district, it does allow approval of an antique shop with a special exception permit. So the applicant is proposing that if we were to add thrift store to the RP zoning district, that it would be treated in a similar manner and be added as a special exception use. So just to conclude some of my comments, as you think about this, the Planning Commission should think about not just the subject property that's the subject of the request that the property owner would like to locate the store to, but you should also think about this use as it would be throughout the RP zoning district if we were to receive other requests for special exception permits in other locations. So you'd want to think about, is it appropriate for special exceptions to be granted in other areas of the county besides this one location? And you would want to think about too, if the property owner were to come forward and instead of requesting a special exception permit, if they were to come forward and request a rezoning of the property, you'd want to think about the impacts from rezoning a parcel, particularly one that's outside of a growth area, and what impacts that could have on an area where a certain type of use was not anticipated at the time that that area was zoned. So those are important decisions as part of approving a rezoning request. And if this use were to go in under, if we were to continue to just call it retail stores and the owner had to request a rezoning of the site, we'd have to think about the impacts from rezoning the parcel. So that concludes my comments. I'll attempt to answer questions you might have. I will just note that staff has more research to do, and it's particularly with regards to other localities. So I wouldn't be able to answer exactly what all of our neighbors are doing, but we'd be glad to look into some of that for you if you have questions. But I'll try to answer questions you might have at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Anybody have questions?
Yes, I have a few. It's in my zone. And I do think thrift stores are taking a very important place in our society. It recycles goods, but also it helps with prices nowadays. But questions, what would be the difference between, so we already allow the antique stores. What would be the difference between this and the thrift store? I know you hadn't started on any type of ordinance or anything yet, but,
Our definition for antique shops specifically speaks to selling items from a particular era. So when we were having initial discussions with the property owner, and we were looking at use classifications, and we certainly discussed the antique shop's use. While there may be a possibility she could sell, or the property owner could sell some antique goods, that's not the bulk of their operation. They receive donated goods of all types, so weren't really comfortable putting this into the category of an antique shop.
okay. This is with provisions we're thinking about, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, and so they have a location, the Massaponax Church area, on Route One. And this proposed location's on Route One, correct? But in
Correct.
Caroline, not Spotsylvania.
Correct.
There would have to be, I would think, some control over the difference between a thrift store and an antique store. In my mind, is thrift store constantly gets donations, as far as I can see, and we don't want that pile up of stuff outside, and we don't want things piled up in the front. So something would have to be, there would have to be some type of strict maintenance as far as that goes, if we allowed this. I mean, I can see if we allow antique stores, thrift store is not too far of a stone's throw from that, but there would have to be some regulations followed.
So that's correct, and that's something certainly we could think about and address in the development standards that are placed into the ordinance.
Yeah, we could
then-
see what Spotsylvania is doing because
Correct.
it's located, down the road.
Correct.
I'm not sure, maybe 8 miles from this location.
I'm not sure the mileage, but
Yeah,
they do have 2 locations currently in Spotsylvania County, and they're looking
Yeah.
to expand into Caroline. And in addition to development standards, you would also have the opportunity to place conditions on a special exception request. So depending on where the thrift store would be sited, and how you would need to regulate the impacts of that use locating into that area, you would also have the opportunity there to place conditions and restrictions on how the use would need to operate. So no
Mhm.
screening, for example, along the roadway could be a condition on a special exception
Mhm.
request.
yeah. I would think we need to maintain some control over it.
Correct.
The ones that are in Ladysmith look fine to me, but they're in, a business area.
Correct.
So they kind of fall under that. We would need that to happen.
Correct.
Mr. Robinson, let me ask you, so under RP, would this be just this specific, or are we putting thrift stores under RP?
Putting it under the RP district as a use that, aside from this property owner.
So it would no longer be special exception?
Well, no, it would, they're proposing that it would be added to the RP district as a special
As a
exception.
special exception?
So someone else could come forward, if they had a proposal in another area of the
Right.
county, then someone
Okay.
else could come forward and request a special
That's what I was
exception.
afraid of. Okay,
Mhm.
and I wanted to clear that.
Mhm.
By any chance, did you talk to the applicant about rezoning that property as business, as B1?
We did, we also discussed that, and the parcel is not within a growth area, so there's some disadvantages to rezoning the parcel, but that is certainly another alternative that the property owner could look into.
And it's not necessarily a growth area for Caroline today,
Correct.
but in the future, to me, Route 1 is going to be commercial B1 pretty much all the way around. What's attached to this property? What are the borders? What are the neighbors? Is that RP as well?
It's RP surrounding the site in all directions.
directions.
And there are residential uses directly to the north
Mhm.
and to the south on both sides.
How long did it operate as a commercial location before it became defunct or shut down? And how long has it been shut down?
I don't know how long it operated, but when the county adopted zoning in 1970, it was there then, and the business that was there had been there since the 50s,
Okay.
if not earlier than that. Based on the records I saw in the department, that use stopped operating in 1985. And then something else went in there in the late eighties, maybe early nineties. It wasn't the same type of business.
But it was a business.
Yes,
Okay.
That was before we, so it was operating, but not and it wasn't zone business ever.
correct,
Okay.
correct. Mr. Pennington asked if we would like to see the GIS. Would you all like to see the
Sure, I would love
parcel?
to. Yes.
I don't want to get too parcel specific in talking about this request, but because what we could need to think about tonight or just make sure we give thought to is the impacts of the request on the RP district in its entirety, countywide.
So there is the option of it being zone. She could request that it be zone business,
Correct,
okay?
correct.
But how would that change things for her? Would it be upper taxes or, I mean, would it change things or it's just a longer process?
It's actually a similar process, a special exception and a rezoning are very similar as far as the time frame
Okay.
goes. So the county could entertain a rezoning request of the parcel.
Because like Mr. Young said, that probably going to be businesses there eventually.
Well,
But if we made it a special exemption in RP, then is there going to be a string of businesses along there requesting special exception? And then it never becomes business, it's just special exception after, a line of special exceptions.
The
Then my
tax
neighbor,
implication.
next door to me is gonna pop up with a thrift store.
they
'Cause I'm in
certainly,
RP. I
yeah,
live in RP. I'm
they
just
certainly
saying.
could request a special
Yeah,
exception.
the tax condition of it, I mean, if they're filed as a 501c3, is not relevant to, they're not paying taxes, they're paying it as a nonprofit anyway. If they're operating as a retail store, thrift or otherwise, but it's for profit, then they pay taxes just like anybody else would. It's just how they source their material.
Up to the left, just north to the left, is that commercial?
It is a commercial use, but the property is not zoned commercial. So
Wow.
that parcel is actually RP and has been operating as a non-conforming use
Wow.
for many years.
Homestead.
Was
That's
it
what that is. Okay.
a homestead exemption?
Yes, yes,
Oh,
yes.
Okay. I know where we are now.
Yeah, so this parcel's diagonal from Homestead.
Okay.
yeah, that's been there forever.
Across the street, correct?
Yes.
So Homestead was a special exception or,
Just a pre-existing use that's continued to operate.
okay, before we had our zoning laws.
Yes.
And that's no
And
longer in
ordinances.
operation. All right. It
It's
is
still in operation.
Oh, it is somebody.
It's kind of like, you still have country stores dotted here and there
Trices now. It's,
Right.
that were, they're grandfathered, some of these
Correct.
places. And
Correct.
this one's grandfather, correct?
Correct.
Homestead, or
Correct.
where Homestead was.
Mhm. Legally non-conforming is the correct, accurate term.
Okay.
So I had a couple of, well, I was just looking, I know if we decide to move forward with this, that the zoning group would write up the text amendments, but I know that, I guess the current thrift stores we have in the county all are in B1.
Correct.
And I don't know what stipulations we have on those thrift stores currently in B1, but, in reading some of the stuff that they had put in their recommendations, about the building could be used for charitable work, which may be, but isn't limited to charity, giving goods, education, training, or monetary assistance. So, as far as them, are they gonna have programs there, or classes, or, based, to me, it looks like it's more than a thrift store if they're gonna be doing all of those, doing education and teaching and training stuff in it, which I don't know what they would be, what type of educational things they was doing. I had a concern with that. And then they got in here where there shall be no inoperable vehicles stored outside a fully enclosed building, which at a thrift store, why would you have, even if they weren't outside the fencing, why would you have inoperable vehicles around the business? But, so because I don't know exactly everything that they do, within a thrift store and what we currently police the thrift stores that's currently in B1, I have a concern with that as to actually what they'll be doing. Or how would we know when we write up the text, what what do we need to be looking at to make sure that we capture things that we see that a thrift store might do that should be incorporated in the text. But
Mhm.
my only concern is that, most thrift stores, they're getting donations from everywhere, all types of stuff, whether it's clothing, strollers or stuff like that. They tend to not be, I wouldn't want one beside my residence. So that's why my concern is that it's approving it for RP. I have a concern with that in the residential area is where my concern is.
Some of the, just talking about the educational programs, I work with a bunch of nonprofits in Carolina and Hanover particularly. And I oftentimes, and I don't know specifically about this one, but when they talk about educational programs, they're bringing in disadvantaged people or people with mental disabilities, challenges, things along those lines. And they're teaching them, how to run a cash register. It's very similar to Goodwill in that regard. The idea is to have a program that teaches them how to use a label gun, make a label, things along those lines that have been really successful. They're integrated into the school systems and whatnot, and they're bringing in teenagers, older teenagers, and teaching them some skills to try to help them, give them some life skills.
So are they charging? Is that a free?
Yeah,
Is that free?
Yeah, that's free. They don't charge anything to the disadvantaged people or programs that they deal with. But part of their give back is to help teach these skills.
It's, if it's provision, they have a good reputation, and actually they give away a lot. It's associated with a Christian community. So are they asking for the whole 26 acres?
No, when we had those discussions initially, I don't believe they were intending to utilize the entire parcel for the use, nor were they, if a rezoning would be entertained, I don't think they were intending to request a rezoning of the entire parcel. They're mainly focused on just the store site itself.
Yeah, we would need to know how large that is.
And yes.
But if there's also an option to make it a business rezone, just as easy as, that might make a little more sense to have it as business rather than a thrift store in the middle of RP, because then you've got, like Mr. Young said, requests all over the county for a thrift store in the middle of RP.
Mr. Robinson, the one thing that I noticed is I drive by that area quite frequently, and aside from the homestead, there really is no commercial development around that building. I counted like 5 or 6 houses on the one side and 5 or 6 houses the other way. Obviously, that big, beautiful farm across the street. And the other thing that I noticed the other day is this particular property had the donation bin out front, and there was quite a bit of trash already out there building up from, you know, just the donation box being there, and they're not even in operation at the current time. So to address what Dr. Horton said is that, there's gotta have to be some better way to mitigate that mess out front if it even moves forward.
Mhm. Correct. So just as a reminder, this, as is sort of has already been stated, this request would need to be considered as far as its impact throughout the entire RP zoning district countywide.
Doing it as a special exception, though, gives us the ability to pick and choose, you know, a yes or no on an individual basis, as opposed to if this gets rezoned as a B1, anything that has a by right exception can go in there after that if they want to, and there'd be no consideration to who or what it is at any point after that decision is made.
Well,
Certain proffers can be put in place.
correct. I was going to say if a rezoning were to be submitted and if the applicant's willing to offer proffers, some uses that may not be desirable for the location could be proffered out as part of a rezoning request.
I was just didn't want it.
Now, that makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, I just didn't want it to get a blank check, so to speak, on whatever they want.
That's
to
a good
go in
point.
B1.
Of course, proffers are voluntary, so that the applicant would have to be willing to offer some proffers.
Any other questions?
So I didn't know if you all wanted to continue discussion on this or make a recommendation. As I said earlier, there's not a specified time frame that you need to act or make a motion, so it's at the discretion of the commission.
Do we have a recommendation?
I mean, my recommendation would be to rezone it business B1, but not sure how the rest of the board feels about that.
That sounds like the best of the two choices,
Yes.
rather than, because if you open it up, like you said, to, RP, then that includes the whole county.
Mr. Hughes?
I just want to remind the commission to please consider this as a countywide and don't couch this as parcel specific. This ordinance, this request is to consider this use countywide. So a lot of your questioning and comments are going to a specific parcel. And so this applicant has requested that this use be added to the ordinance. So I just want to remind the commission to try to maintain that broad perspective and not narrow the conversation. I understand that the applicant has made this request, but as you consider this use being added to the ordinance, consider it from the broader perspective versus the individual items that you'd want to see on a particular parcel. That's extremely important.
And you're talking in regard to RP though, correct?
Correct. Right.
So, I mean, so in
Yeah,
other
whatever
words, you're
whatever
saying-
district you want to put it
same
in or
thing as
whatever
we
it
said.
is, but it should be a broader discussion versus a singular parcel, because this will have implications throughout the county, and I don't want to have a quasi-public hearing on a particular parcel tonight.
Chairman, I would like to make a motion that we forward to the board that we deny the request to add this usage to the ordinance in the RP district.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Young, second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those in favor, all those opposed say nay.
Well, I'm going to abstain at this point because I'm not ready to turn it down yet. We haven't had enough discussion in my mind. Or are you saying that,
The only thing you're doing tonight is moving this or not moving it to determine if you want the board to consider it as a use. So
okay, consider it as a RP use?
just as a use, yeah, right now we're talking about an RP district, but it will come back. If the board says yes, move forward with amending the ordinance, at that point is when you can determine if you want to add it to additional districts or if you want to create, specific conditions, if you want to make it as a by right use or a special exception use. Those details will be worked out when it comes back for a public hearing to get added to the ordinance.
If
This
it comes
discussion,
back.
Okay,
Yeah, if it comes
at
back,
what
yeah.
point though do we discuss possibly this becoming a business plot? This is not the time?
no, because we're not talking about. a
So you only
specific
want a
use.
recommendation on whether this can be a special exception, adding it as a special exception countywide in rural preservation?
Right. If
So you want a
that's-
yes or no on that, correct?
That is correct.
That's it.
Adding it to the ordinance considering adding it to the ordinance as a use. And if you want to make it a special exception use, then that could be part of your recommendation. But yes.
And that's all we're voting on, right?
That's all we're
Okay,
considering
so
tonight.
I will vote no. Well, wait a minute. What was the, excuse me.
Everybody voted no, with the exception of yourself. Kate.
Okay, all right. So we're saying no, do not add it to the RP. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I
So we're not gonna
understood
move forward.
the motion.
Motion does not carry.
Well, you're making a recommendation not
Right.
to add it to the RP
Right.
district.
Okay, all right, I'm
So,
clear on it now.
we
I'm
will-
clear on it now, because we discussed several different options. That's why I wanted to
But this is
make sure
only
I
one
was clear.
So would the commission consider adding a thrift store use to any district? Because you were very specific in your RP motion and vote just now, but from a broader perspective, you know, we have other zoning districts or zoning classifications, so would the commission be open to adding it to any district? I think that's what we really need to be clear on, because you were very specific about RP and not the total ordinance itself. So if you don't want to add it to the ordinance at all as a use, then be clear about that. If you want to consider it as some other district in some other districts, then be clear about that as well.
Like business districts or commercial.
Or in one.
So I think we're all in agreement that we don't want to have anything in the rural RP district. I think we should have more conversation about where and specific definitions of what a thrift store is and limitations we might have on them, and maybe future meetings. I don't know that it necessarily needs to be decided tonight in that particular
Do
detail.
we not already have a definition of what a thrift store is in the county?
I think they fall under retail right now.
When they locate within a B1 zoning district, they're just classified as retail stores.
And Mr. Tigner, the point I was trying to make before is that if it comes back from the board as say, yeah, they want to move forward with a potential use, new definition, and that's when those details that you were speaking of could certainly be ironed out, and you could have multiple meetings on that level of detail.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I know we're kind of narrowing in on this one particular property, and I understand that, but you're looking at the bigger picture other than RP.
Right, because this was gonna go into the ordinance because they need use, and so you can decide at some future point whether you want to do this business district, if you want to do one district, if you want positions, if you want to do it as a special use or zoning. This is the discussion tonight is about having that discussion to add to the ordinance.
The agenda.
Well, yeah, it's for consideration. And it's gotta go to the board and then come back to you all for public hearing.
I think it's a possibility for the future to consider it to be in a business district, but not in RP.
Then that's fine. So I would say the question is, does the commission even want to consider it being added to the ordinance?
Added to the ordinance, you said?
Yeah, anywhere in the ordinance, wherever it may be.
So I have a question, so I want some clarity. So currently, the thrift stores that we currently have in the county in B1, when they submitted application, they didn't submit it as a thrift store, they submitted it as a general, retail store, right? So all the thrift stores we currently have in the county now didn't apply as a thrift store. So what you're saying is that we would now add that verbiage to the complete ordinance to recognize a thrift store per se.
As a use, that is
Gotcha.
correct.
Gotcha.
Is there any way, possibly you could, retract your, suggestion and we know, figure out how Spotsylvania defines their thrift stores at this point?
I'm
Or
not
do we
gonna-
know?
I'm not going to retract my motion because I don't want a thrift store in RP,
Okay,
okay?
so that's clear. So then the next question is, would you consider it in any other district? And so your ultimate recommendation to the board could be, we don't want it in RP, but we might consider it in other classifications.
I would be fine with that.
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
Or it could be M1.
So how would we?
Is that what you're saying,
Ooh.
Mr. Rollins?
I
We
think
don't
it's-
want it in RP, but
Yeah, we do not.
there's still, you left the door open that we could.
So I'll amend my motion to state that we're making a motion, I'm making a motion to deny the thrift store in RP, but find it suitable to be placed in the ordinance in B1 and M1 district.
Or suitable.
Would that work?
Yeah, and if I could just wordsmith it a little bit, I wouldn't use the term deny, I'd just say we recommend that the use not be
Okay,
a use allowed
Okay.
in the RP district.
Okay.
But we would consider it in other zoning classifications. You're not denying a particular.
so to change my verbiage, we are sending to the board that we do not find it suitable for thrift stores to be in RP, but find it suitable in other places in the ordinance.
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed will be none. The motion carries.
Okay, I have another question. What is the difference? We don't have a definition between a thrift store and a retail store right now because we don't have a definition right now for thrift stores.
Correct. If they locate into a B1 parcel, they're just classified as retail
I
stores.
mean, okay, but
So it's
we
not
don't know what the
necessary to have
difference. I would like to know, because you said something about looking into what other counties,
Mhm.
do. I'd like to know when, because this subject's going to come up again, I'm assuming.
Well, so if it comes down the road that we do, if something changes in the ordinance for M1 and B1, at that time, when thrift stores added to the ordinance, you would add the definition of what a thrift store is at that time.
Yeah, and I'd like to know the difference between a thrift store and a retail store.
But at this time, we do not have a clear, concise definition of what a thrift store is.
Not other than the one the petitioner has offered in the packet.
Yeah.
And we have not adopted that.
Correct. And quite frankly, if we were to review some uses, some other ordinances, it's likely that some other localities handle them in the same manner that we do, of just classify them as retail stores. But we can certainly research and see what else we can find.
Which in turn, they really truly are, as a retail operation in a retail zoned area.
Correct.
Sort of, but just a lot of them give away a lot. So I don't know if that makes a difference or not. That's why I want to know how, other localities are handling it. Hanover, Spotsylvania.
Yeah, we can see what else we can find on that.
All right.
That one was tricky.
Yeah, well, this one's gonna be the same. All right, so now we have the, Mr. Robinson again with a request for a, manufactured home sales.
Yeah, so this is the second request that we've received. Now, as I mentioned earlier, at times the county is approached with proposals that there just does not seem to be a use classification in the code that the requested use fits within. So the property owner can petition the Board of Supervisors to add a requested use to the ordinance. So with this particular request, this involves a request for, I'm using the terminology manufactured home sales. That's what I'm calling it right now. That could possibly change as we continue, but just for some background information, we received a petition from Patriot Homes regarding a desire to add a use to the B1 zoning district, which is our business district. that would permit for the retail display and sales of new manufactured and modular homes. And again, this petition would need to be considered throughout for the entire B1 zoning district countywide. But just so you're aware that the site that they're targeting is located along US Route 1 within the Mattapanai voting district. And something that I will mention from the staff comments, it's important to note that our office use cannot involve storage, sale, or delivery of materials, goods, or products, which this type of operation will specifically involve. They receive delivery of goods and products regularly, and their display is rotated out every so often, so there will always be some type of delivery taking place to the site. So classifying them as an office doesn't really fit. As we've kind of talked about, even with the last item, the purpose of this is to sort of gauge the county's interest in whether we would like to move forward with amending our zoning ordinance to accommodate the requested use. So if you saw in the packet, you would have seen their petition is offering a proposal to enumerate a use titled New Manufactured and Modular Homes Display, Sales, and Service with small part storage under roof. The petitioner is asking that be enumerated within the B1 district as a use by right. Staff would concur with enumerating it as a use by right if we have associated development standards in the ordinance. And those are not provided in the packet or developed at this time, but that would be something we would need to consider if we do want to add it as a use by right. Something else I'll note is that just from some research we've done so far and looking at different sites, I'm going to show you a couple of slides. But what we would envision for this type of use if it were to locate to Caroline County is being arranged in a neighborhood style that would have pedestrian accommodations for the customers to walk around between the units. And I'll show you what this looks like in some of the photos. So pulled some street views from locations of Clayton Homes and Oakwood Homes in the region. So this is the Clayton Homes site in Ashland, which is on Route 1. This is what that location appears. And also along Route 1 in Ashland, you have Oakwood Homes, and this is the appearance of their site on US Route 1. Just to give you an idea of what this type of use would look like from the roadway. This is Clayton Homes site in Tappahannock, Virginia. And this is Clayton Homes site in Chester, Virginia, which is in Chesterfield County. And I'll backtrack to say that Tappahannock is, I believe it's in Essex County. Now, the site that we looked at and were sort of fond of from an appearance standpoint was this site in Fredericksburg, was the Fredericksburg Clayton Homes, which is in Spotsylvania County. And as you see in the street view there, you would pull into the site, and the display units are arranged sort of going around the main entrance and the sales offices in the background there at the end of the drive in. And you can see somewhat that there are some sidewalks that go around the street and around to the units, providing accommodations for pedestrians to be able to visit the display. And the Spotsylvania site, just out of curiosity, we looked to see the acreage that was associated with that site. This is just a rough or approximate measurement. That site is about 25 acres. And the acreage or the size would be a consideration as far as, the site that's being looked at for this use to locate onto, and that could impact the amount of display that the use would be able to have on the site. So some sites, depending on their size, may not be able to have that number display versus others. So this is why I provide this information in this presentation. And it would be something we would need to think about and maybe put into development standards if we choose to move forward.
So you didn't do the acreage on any of the other locations?
No,
It's
just,
like,
Cause they look smaller,
yeah,
but,
thought I saw 3 acres,
Yeah.
right
2.98.
at 2.98 acres.
I'm talking about that that he had on the screen.
I-
So he didn't have acreage for the other ones on the screen?
I did not get acreage of the other ones. We can
They
certainly
look
look
larger.
that up.
They look a lot larger.
And the closest one might be the one in Mechanicsville or Richmond or whatever ones you said.
Nice.
No, not that. There was one further south, I thought.
Chester.
There we go, Chester. Thank you. This is a small thing, but do they mean US Route 1 Highway, Ruther Glen, Virginia?
Yes,
Instead of Ladysmith, it's 2 words? I mean,
yes, yes.
all right.
And I believe there was a typo in some of the materials referencing it as Patriot Highway, but it is US Route 1 in Caroline. So just to wrap up some of the staff comments, what you should give some consideration to with this request is its impact on the B1 district, and which is located generally within our primary growth areas and along our roadways that are designated with the Highway Corridor Overlay District, which is HCOD. And the Planning Commission would also want to consider if this amendment should be narrowly defined to just only address manufactured home sales, or if the county may want to consider a broader use classification that could accommodate other similar type uses, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So for example, I just pulled these definitions from 2 other localities. So when I say narrowly defined, you'll see Fluvanna's definition, they have a specific use for this, manufactured home sales, and it's a straightforward definition that defines it as establishments primarily engaged in the display, retail sale, rental, and repair of new and used manufactured homes, modular homes, parts, and equipment. Whereas in Spotsylvania, they have a broader use classification, and this is what I'm speaking of if the county wants to consider something of this nature versus something so specific. But in Spotsylvania, they have a broader use classification that is identified as heavy equipment and specialized vehicle sale, rental, and/or service establishment. And that use not only captures the sale of rental and servicing of manufactured homes, but it also speaks to trucks, buses, boats, trailers, and farm and construction machinery or equipment. So just some things to think about if we would want a broader use classification. I would say that a broader classification could assist staff in being able to address some other uses that we get approached with occasionally. But if the county wanted to be specific and just define this as manufactured home sales, that would be part of the discussion moving forward. So you'd want to, tonight, the purpose is to just make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors as to whether or not the Caroline County zoning ordinance should be amended to make provision for the requested use. And it's been determined that we don't currently have a use classification that this fits within. So that's going to wrap up my staff comments. I'll try to address questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Cobb.
And we also do not have a use classification that addresses some of the other items identified in that definition. So that's one reason a broader definition might be something the county want to
Heavy
think about.
construction equipment, buses. blah, blah,
Correct.
blah. Okay,
Correct.
thank you, Ms. Roman. Questions?
Okay, so on the first page, there was a statement about in Article 2 as far as an office use. So does that apply to this location of the requestee?
If
What-
you're speaking to the first page of the staff comments,
It says something about an office use. shall not involve storage, sale, or delivery of any equipment. So are we saying that this current location is considered office? use?
So that's what I mentioned, starting off to say that because their operation is gonna involve regularly the delivery and storage of materials on the site, we don't feel that it's appropriate for it to be classified as an office.
So so is it currently classified as an office, that location?
They,
Okay, so any location in the county wouldn't be classified as an office? It couldn't
So,
be classified as an office too?
if
at
this
time?
use wanted to operate on a appropriately zoned parcel without any of the display and storage, it would be classified as an office.
So I had a couple of comments. I know the county doesn't currently have, residents have to go outside the county to look at these type of homes. And they don't have an option in the county to purchase from a vendor or company inside the county. So, I think if the county residents didn't have to go outside the county to purchase a home, I like that idea. My only concern is that, like that location in Spotsylvania with the 25 acres, I think that if something was to be like this in the county, I think it should be able to adequately accommodate the residents. So, which would, in my opinion, should require a large display. Because if I only got 3 or 4 houses on my lot to display, it doesn't give a lot for residents to choose from, and then they still got to go out of the county to look at other options. So, I mean, I'm not opposed to this type of function, this business in the county. If it was to happen, I think it needs to be accommodating to the residents if something like this comes into the county.
So.
So in other words,
an
you're saying-
acreage limitation. Right.
Yeah.
Is that something we're allowed to do?
Yeah, absolutely. That could be
Right.
in development standards.
Because you were included trucks and other things too, you'd have to,
If we go with a use classification that allows for
If we-
some of those
yeah.
other things, yes.
have to figure out how to juggle all that.
Mhm.
And Mr. Robbins, how big is that property? Is it just 3 acres where LJ's office is? Or
That's
Century.
correct, yes, yes. The site that they are considering here in Caroline is only about 3 to 4 acres. So that will limit the number of display units they want to place on the property. And I don't believe they're looking to put as many as what you saw in some of the photographs, but they won't be able to put the number that you saw, for example, in the Spotsylvania image.
I'm with Mr. Rollins. I mean, I like the idea. I just don't like the current size of the current applicant's location. I totally agree that, I mean, I like the presentation that the vendor brought forward. I mean, there's definitely a need for manufactured housing in the county. I mean, it'll give people affordability, and like Mr. Rollins said, they don't go out of the community. I mean, the new homes that are being built right down the street from me, their average is mid-4s. I mean, that's not the average Caroline County resident right now. So,
And I did hear that the zoning, you guys are okay with that usage in the county? Did I hear that?
Well, what we've stated is we would agree with enumerating the use as a by right use in B1 if there are development standards that we add to the ordinance with that. We would be uncomfortable just enumerating them by right with no standards. And something else to think about is, as part of, and this will be discussed more when a text amendment comes forward, if one does come forward, is do we only want to consider the B1 district, or do we want to consider some of our other zoning districts? So the same discussion we had with the last request. So this use could be appropriate in a M1 zone as well, besides just B1. So those are the things the county would need to
Yeah,
think
and that
about.
was one of the things I was gonna ask about, yeah.
Mhm.
Which district are we talking about? And I was also gonna comment too on, I mean, just like the thrift store, we're looking for affordability because prices are so, gotten so high. Since the pandemic, everything just keeps going up. So these are more affordable. Yeah,
we
I was
don't-
just
we don't
wondering
know.
which zone and,
Know if he's, we don't know if he's gonna be, his buildings are gonna be cheaper than anybody else's. I mean, we can't. That's
they're
not a
more
guarantee.
affordable than the,
Stick bill.
yeah,
Yeah, but I'm
the
talking about as
stick
far
bill.
as Clayton
yeah.
and the other.
The prices, I think, are like flip over to, I guess, page 5. But are all of these, I know that they take the home to any site. Are all of these type houses allowed in Caroline?
And within certain zoning districts,
Yeah, I mean,
yes.
do we still have mobile home?
So manufactured housing is primarily confined to the RP zoning district,
Okay,
but a modular home is typically considered the same as site built, so that might be allowed in some
I
other
mean,
zones.
we haven't approved any mobile home sites in a long time, have we?
Correct.
Because I don't think you can have a modular home on acreage, but not a trailer, correct? Is that what,
You can
what's the
have a
ordinance right
single
now?
Double wide in the RP
You
zoning.
you can place a
as a-
manufactured home in the RP zoning district,
A double, has to be a double wide?
a single wide or double wide.
Okay,
Manufactured housing in general is allowed in the RP zoning
so
district.
all of these would be allowed,
Correct.
okay?
So can I see those, requirements from the other counties, for this usage or what their verbiage?
So what you're asking us tonight is, would we allow this type of usage, whatever, you all write up?
If you want to make a recommendation to the
B1.
board,
We're only talking about B1 tonight, but we could add,
well, I would say not as specific as B1. Just tonight, if you want to make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors to add this use to the Caroline County Code. We're not speaking specific zones tonight, and that was not in our
okay,
material
add it as a usage,
to the Caroline ordinance.
but you've got B1 on the first page here. Add a use to the B1 district.
Well, that's proposed in the applicant's petition. Their petition is requesting to enumerate it in B1
Okay.
zoning, but the county can consider to go beyond that. Or,
So I think opening it up to B1, M1, et cetera, it would be okay with limitations like to the size. I don't think 3 acres would be enough, but that's where the further discussion could come in with what is an appropriate lot size. Is 10 acres enough? 15 acres? That would be further discussion we could have. I don't have a problem with it B1 if there's enough land to go there with it. But I think it should open up to other zoning districts also, aside from
RP?
except for RP. I'm not okay with RP, but B1, M1, et cetera, kind of thing. So
The idea is acceptable.
Right.
Just not the
it's the
limited amount of
where, the
acreage.
how. Yeah.
Anybody else have questions or comments? I concur. Do we want to make a recommendation? Mr. Ball, you look like you have something further to say.
So if we open it up to other, businesses, how would we, I mean, right now we could say we're we're okay with adding it to the ordinance for mobile homes, but how would each one of them have to be individual in the ordinance? So let's say if it was a tractor's Morton's equipment or whatever, or Green Line, would that, how would we?
You're talking about the acreage?
No, I'm talking about opening it up to
Definition.
other businesses, so not just being that we're doing it,
Mhm.
say mobile homes,
So what
tractor
So-
sales.
Yeah, between the two use classifications that are shown on the screen, one is more specific just to manufactured home sales, whereas the other one allows opportunity for some
More
other
broad.
uses.
Yeah.
So if we go with a broader use classification, the second one that's listed on the screen, that could allow for some other types of businesses. And as I mentioned, we've gotten approached by some that could actually assist staff in being able to address some of those requests.
But, I mean, the broader use is good, but also would the acreage apply to everything on that list, or would you have to be more specific when writing the ordinance here?
We may have to develop some development standards to
Yeah.
address. Mhm.
I'm generally okay with Spotsylvania's definition, except for the servicing of the trucks, buses, boats, trailers, the machinery, the heavy equipment that might involve some sort of pollution or contamination issues, used parts and that sort of thing. The sales of new manufactured homes, equipment, even the rental side of things, because it tends to be newer equipment and it tends to be kept in better shape. I'm not sure that we want to open it up to the service industry going anywhere they want in that regard.
Yeah, so that's the only problem with the broad base definition. We're saying that, you've got to have certain things for, like you said, heavy equipment. We've got to have other things for manufacturing homes, so.
But if we push to move this forward, the definition would get worked out
Correct.
through massaging it at certain points.
Correct. The text amendment will be developed.
We could strike some things and add some things.
Correct.
So it could just be sales and rentals and not service. So service, I mean, if that's something that
Yeah, I would want to strike that service
you could
part out.
strike that if there was something that.
Yeah, remember, we better just stick with sales and rental for,
Do they already do repairs up at the Flying J at where they are now, and any of those truck stop areas where?
I'm not sure.
So the Flying J behind, on the west side of 95, they do have a tire, like shop there. They don't do I don't think they do major repairs.
Right.
But they do have a tire shop and they may even do some oil change. I
The
don't
one
know.
behind the visitor center.
No,
Oh,
that's a separate
that's a
use.
car wash.
That's
Oh, a truck
no.
wash.
It's a truck wash, and I think
Yeah.
they do some maintenance. But
Yeah.
at the truck stop over on Welcome Way, they do have a tire shop there as well. So it's kind of back in the
Right.
back. Yeah, I don't know if they do any major repairs, but I know they do tire service.
So there already is something kind of in place for minor repairs.
Well, yeah, when you get into automotive and truck repair, that's almost delving into another use classification. So, which we have separate classifications for those when you get into automotive repair of heavy equipment and trucks. And those uses typically require approval of a special exception permit.
So the crux right now is just to move this forward so that verbiage can be defined for potential manufactured mobile homes and anything else that might be deemed fit
Mhm.
for this amendment.
Correct.
Mr. Chair, just for clarification, so our truck stop definition does allow for tire repair and minor repair. So like oil changes and that kind of stuff. And so that would be a part of that use. So, and we have a request coming from a truck facility that's going to, their goal is to redevelop their site and include a truck wash and minor, oil change facility as well, so. As a part of, it's already defined in the current use.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Anybody else? Do we want to make a motion to a recommendation to the board?
It just depends on if we want to go, we want to stick to the manufacturing of homes right now, or do we want to make it
I think that that's going to be worked out though, right?
broad? Well, once they start working on it, they might need a little hint tonight which direction to go. I don't know. I mean, I think the manufacturing of homes, I think is fine. The service and the truck sounds more complex to me. Maybe that needs a separate description. And the homes too, we said, we want to concentrate on having more acreage. Whereas the trucks and buses and boats might not need as much acreage.
Recommendation, anybody?
Mr. Chair, I recommend that we move forward with exploring adding the sale of manufactured homes as a retail site to our ordinances in most everything except for the RP district, with certain limitations associated for acreage and display.
I'll second that. Does that sound
Sounds-
like we're headed in the right direction?
Is that broad enough
Of
to
what
give-
you need from us?
I believe so. I don't know if you needed to get as specific as speaking to the RP
Okay,
district,
I can
but
pull it back if you want.
we just need to know if you have a recommendation to move this forward to the Board of Supervisors for consideration.
All those favors say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries. This will be forwarded to the board for review.
Okay.
Wow. These have been toughies. We're at any and all matters. Mr. Hughes, looks like you have something to say.
I do.
Of course.
Shocker. I will be brief. I just wanted to bring to the attention of the commission and the citizens of the county that on April 13th, 2026, between the hours of 5 and 7 p.m. at the Lewis and Clark Elementary School at 18101 Clark and York Boulevard in Luther Glen, Virginia, the Virginia Department of Transportation will have a public meeting on the STARS study that is currently underway to assess the potential safety and operational improvements along Route 639 in Ladysmith between Green Road and Bull Church Road, primarily focusing on the I-95 on and off-ramp approaches at Ladysmith Road in Caroline County. The purpose of the STAR study is to address the safety and congestion management needs identified within the study area. And project partners include Caroline and the George Washington Regional Commission. The final study report will include project concepts, the localities and planning and transit organizations could choose to pursue through the project funding applications. Draft concepts are being presented to the public for comment at the April meeting before the study report are finalized. No construction dates are scheduled. And also earlier in 2025, an online survey gathered community input on the existing travel conditions in the Ladysmith Road study area. This input helped the study team to identify existing concerns so that the draft project recommendations could be developed for potential improvements. And so there's a public meeting, as I said, on April 13th between the hours of 5 and 7 p.m. at the Lewis and Clark Elementary School, 18101 Clark and York Boulevard, Luther Glen, Virginia, 22546. So
Thank you.
I just wanted to bring that to your attention because our next meeting will be after that date. And so certainly if any commission members have any interest in participating in or in that process and seeing what the concepts are, is an excellent opportunity to do so and get questions answered from VDOT representatives that will be present. So
Is this gonna be broadcast to the, no,
no, this is not a county meeting. This is a VDOT meeting, so it will not be broadcast.
Those improvements are gonna be in Mattaponi district. The ramp, I believe, is, unless there's,
Yes.
redistricting again.
Yeah, I think the way the district lines are drawn right now, it is in Mattaponi district.
Yeah, because I know Port Royal got a little bit of Ladysmith, which was kind of surprising in the last.
Yes, the Port Royal district does come down. I think it stops at the intersection of 639 and Route 1 is where the sliver of the Port Royal district is.
How that
in
worked out, I have no idea.
Mr. Hughes, do you know what the presentation as far as the format, is it gonna be, a speaker talking as the presentation is going on and then questions later? 'Cause I know when the electric companies, Dominion and Rappahannock did this power line thing, they had posters around the room and, people would, if you walked over to the poster and somebody was there and you had questions. So if it's gonna be in that format or is it gonna be a presentation and then questions afterward, do you know?
So the last time we did a public meeting like this, it was a little bit of introduction of the VDOT staff that was present, a little bit of introduction of the concept, like kind of what I read tonight. And then there was more of stations with VDOT representatives and being able to answer questions, hence the 5 to 7. I don't think it's going to be a presentation and a 2-hour question and answer period. It's more of a rolling style meeting. We can
Okay.
come in and get questions.
anything else? Anything else from anybody else? Okay, well, I would make a motion to adjourn until April 23rd, 2026, which would be our next regular meeting. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Well, call it a night, folks.